Welcome back, sports fans. Chatty CRC here. Part 3 of our Impulse RC Reverb build. And as you can see where we left off, got all of our ESCs and motors wired in to the flight controller. Everything's tinned up, ready to go. This is where things kind of start getting jumbled around, so I'm going to try to make the most sense out of progression as possible. So everything in this video, if you see me do something, it means that it works, and if not, I'll come back and edit in what I had to do to get it to work, but it basically means that I've already went forward in time to test all of this out. There's a link up in the top right now for the playlist that has the complete build. We'll be going through the entire setup process, Crossfire, tuning, all that kind of stuff. Great thing about it being 0 degrees outside is that you can take your time with a build since you're not in that big hurry to fly, and make sure that you do everything correctly. It's also great to be able to watch the videos back and see what mistakes you might have made. Real quick edit point as far as putting in these lock and press nuts on the underneath from the first video. It's not in the instructions, but what you're actually supposed to do is take a washer and put a bolt through the washer and up through the frame, and then the washer will help compress those nuts back down into the carbon fiber, so you don't have to do that step as much when you are attaching the arms to the frame. So that's it. Let's get started on the rest of the electronics. Alright, let's start with the easy part. Camera bracket is awesome. Thank you so much, Impulse RC, for providing real good screws that you can tighten down on and everything. This is Eagle 2 run cam that's in here. Everything fits really good. Perfect. Loving that. I've got my wire all cut and ready to go to solder. Now, as far as VTX and Crossfire, let's look at the Crossfire first. So the Crossfire, I'm going to actually be using the regular dipole antenna, and I'm going to try to use the antenna mounts that come with the Reverb and use it in a V orientation. So I have actually trimmed the wires because I live here in North America and I want it as close to the 915 as possible. So I have taken close to 7.5 millimeters off of each end of the antenna. Just measure that out and snip snip. I've also reversed the wire because the way that I plan on putting it in the Reverb will allow the antennas just to kind of come up and go like this, up through a mount into a V. Then I have taken what I've done is I have prepared the Unify by flipping around the SMA UFL connector and hot gluing that down and securing that with some tape, because this is going to be mounted to the underneath side of the top plate. I typically don't like putting things on the top plate so I can just take it on and off, but I think this is going to work out good. And then all of our wires will go here, and then part of the reason that you have to put it on the top plate is because of the connector. We got to secure this somehow. You know, these UFL SMA connectors, they do save your VTXs, but in my opinion they create just a mounting challenge because you can't just kind of stick this thing back here and screw an antenna on it, which I would be fine with anyway. Connected to this, we have our Crossfire wiring harness, and I've never done this before, but because the UART situation on at the Bardwell flight controller is not too Crossfire friendly, and if you want to add some other stuff, it can be done, but you have to do resource reassignment and all that stuff, and I don't feel like dealing with that. So what I'm going to do is something that I've always wanted to do, is actually just control it through the Crossfire, which you can do. So I've rearranged some pins on the plug here that plugs into the Crossfire, and coming out of channel 4, which is going to be all the way down here, I have a wire coming out, and that wires directly into the audio wire of the Unify. So now I should be able to do all of my VTX settings and everything from the Crossfire instead of using it through Betaflight OSD. If this doesn't work out, then I'll make it work through the Betaflight OSD, but this will be pretty cool and work just as effective. The longer two wires here are the power and ground, because I'm going to actually snake those up underneath here and bring them around and connect into 5-volt and ground right here, and then have the Crossfire living somewhere back here so the antennas can come up right behind the flight controller right here. So let's get to soldering all this stuff together. Okay, I'll zoom in on this here so you can see. First thing we've done is just I've gone ahead and soldered in the camera connector, and that goes video, power, and then ground. And right behind it is going to be the 5-volt and the ground for Crossfire. I've got that going right in here. This is where you would also wire up your Taranis if you're using FreeSky or something, except you would be using the S bus and telemetry pads. So I've got the harness snaked underneath there. I made those wires longer, and then we have the Unify and the rest of the Crossfire to hook up. So go ahead and do that right now. I always forget which one of these wires goes to TX and which one goes to RX. So I might have to come back in and re-edit this. But I am going to put channel 1 on TX for the Crossfire. Alright, let's tack down. And then RX is going up here. That is on the same UART. Alright, so that is all wired up. Channel 1 actually goes to the RX on the UART, and channel 2 goes to the TX on the UART, which is opposite of the output map in the Crossfire module itself. I always mess that up. Don't know why. Now for our VTX, we have, we'll start with video, which is all the way on the side here. So everything is going through the OSD. And then power is right next to it. And then ground is right next to it and underneath this wire for the Crossfire, so I'm going to have to be pretty careful there. Alright, that's it. So we'll zoom in on that and take a look at that. VTX signal, power, ground, and then Crossfire, power and ground of course are up here, and transmit and receive are back here. So we'll go ahead and do another continuity test just to make sure that nothing has jumbled loose or anything. So everything looks good there. Check all of our grounds because they are all connected together. So there's the ground of the VTX, camera ground, Crossfire ground. So we should be good. Now before I plug any electronics into it, I do want to verify the voltages that are coming out of everything, just to make sure that we are all good there. So we're going to put the voltmeter to DC. And I also have one of these handy smoke stoppers from Race Day Quads, and this here should protect us if anything is busted and wired up incorrectly, even though we've already tested everything with continuity, but you never know. So I'm going to plug that in, make sure none of our wires are touching anything crazy, and now the moment of truth. And we've got a green light there. Now let's just go through and verify some voltages. So let's check and make sure that we're getting 5 volts on our Crossfire. 4.8, so that looks good. Let's check our VTX camera. That's getting the 7.68 that it wants to. Let's check the VTX. 7.7. So everything looks good from a voltage standpoint. So I guess we can go ahead and plug in our components now and see if that all works. Okay, so we got the Taranis here with the model built into it, and got all of the modules and everything plugged in here. So we've tested everything. We shouldn't have any fires or nothing like that. So let's just go ahead and plug everything in and hope for the best. VTX has power. Looks like the Crossfire has power.
Switch warning.
So we are going to bind the Crossfire. Click bind. Okay, so the Crossfire is all bound up simply by pressing the bind button there and the bind button there. And I do have, I'll zoom in on this here. I do have my smart audio control running. If you see VTX right here, I can actually go down and change channels and all of that stuff on the Unify, which is pretty sweet. So as far as the settings go on that, pretty much the standard stuff, except on output 4 you change that to smart audio. And then channel mapping, I always put channel 8 to a link quality. Now in the Taranis, if I go into radio setup to discover new sensors, I should be getting all of my telemetry data here. So now what I can do is I like to go into here and have this on switch G, and we're gonna play value, I believe, and I'm gonna look for RSSI because I like to hear that. And we're gonna, ooh, that scared the crap out of me. We're gonna play that every 20 seconds. And then I also want to hear what Crossfire like to hear what kind of what frequency. I like to set the RFMD up as well so it to tell me what I am actually running in, especially since I got this new diamond antenna. And I'll have link quality displayed in the screen. So that's pretty much it when it comes to Taranis setup. Everything else is going to be in the OSD. I just configured a couple of switches. If I don't want to hear that, I can just do that. And now we need to hook into Betaflight and make sure everything is working in Betaflight. But you can see we're getting all of our telemetry information. Pretty cool.
Telemetry lost.
So I also need to plug in and check my video. So we've already set up the VTX channel to what should be broadcasting on my goggles. And yes, indeed, I do have video. And also an out of focused camera lens. Goodness gracious. Alright, that's all focused up. Everything is good and running. So right now we could either complete the build or we could go into Betaflight, and I am going to hook this into Betaflight just because I want to double check and make sure that I have my Crossfire running correctly, because I sometimes mess up the RX and TX. Even though
53.
we're getting telemetry, that's not always a telling sign. So during the setup video here, there's some things I'm doing that you can't see on my Taranis and everything like that. Feel free to ask any questions. There's plenty of videos out there that show you how to kind of link everything up as far as getting your Taranis set up and bound and your sub trim set and setting up switches and everything like that. Don't think I needed to go into that much detail. I will link up at the top here though a video that I have as far as how I set up my Crossfire with Taranis, so I can have visual and audio alerts and not get drove crazy by everything. I always use the audio and of course link quality coming through on the OSD, but sometimes I do fly with a ground station and I just kind of set up that stuff to see visually too. So just wanted to throw that in here real quick. But anyway, we'll come back with one more video as far as getting this all buttoned up and put together, getting a weight on it and all that kind of stuff. And then after that, we'll get into tuning and all that kind of stuff like that. See you guys on the next video.